What's up everyone? It's Justin here with the Real Keeper Home Team with eXp Realty, and welcome back to our channel, Everything Jax Real Estate, where, as you guessed it, we talk everything Jax Real Estate. In today's video, we're going to be doing another market update report as it pertains to the Mandarin area here in Jacksonville, Florida. Now, Mandarin's a very popular area, and so it's going to be very important when you're watching this video to look at what we highlight as far as it concerns the amount of actives, pending, solds, the prices, as well as days on market for this area. We're seeing a lot of change right now in the market, and so it's important to know what's going on. So when I come back, we're going to go over all that great information, as well as some additional information as it concerns rates. And welcome back. So before we get started, you know the drill. If you can, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring that bell so you get notified when we post more content like this in the future. All right, so now as we get started for the market update for Mandarin, as pertains to October, we're going to look at a couple different items. First time we're going to look at is what was the pen to list ratio for the month of October? Now you may ask yourself, what's this pen to list ratio? It's a great question. So the pen to list ratio measures the amount of homes under contract in relation to the amount of homes that were on the market for any given month. And what we saw is we had a 33.3% pen to list ratio for the area. And to really break it down, it just really comes down to we had 447 homes that were under contract in relation to 1,343 that were on the market. Of the 1,343, obviously, if you do the math, 896 is what was left over that is still available as we go into November of this year. Now, to put it all in perspective, the higher that percentage is, the better it is for sellers and buyers, more so sellers, because it just means that there's more homes going under contract in relation to the amount of homes actually on the market, which just means it's a very good seller's market. However, to put it all in perspective, 33% is still a very good number. It's not too far off from last month's percentage, and really that's why it's being described as mildly active right now for the market, because it still is a very strong seller's market. Maybe not as strong as we had once seen, but still strong nonetheless. Now, when we take a closer look, you are going to notice that the homes in the $400,000 to $500,000 price range had the relatively large number of contracts pending for sale. They also had, that price range, had the relatively the highest number of homes active. So, kind of makes sense, right? If you have a certain price point that has the most homes out there, most likely that's also going to be the price point that has the most homes actually under contract in any given area. Now, that being said, what we did see is we saw that the median list price of the area was $544,000. So now you may ask yourself, well, hey, I mean, if it's $400,000 to $500,000, why is this median list price higher? Great question again, and the answer to that question is it just means that there's more homes currently on the market in Mandarin above 500 than there are for homes below 400. So when you start looking at that median price point, it's actually going to push you higher than the amount of homes that make up the majority, which is $400,000 to $500,000 in the area. Now, what we're also going to look at here is we're going to look at the number of listings for sale as it relates to those pending contracts. And what you're going to see is that ultimately there are a healthy amount of homes for sale in that $400,000 to $500,000 range. That's also the majority of contracts we're seeing is in that range. And ultimately, the closer those two lines in the graph ever get to each other, it just means the stronger it is for sellers, because it means that there's less homes available at any given price point in relation to the ones that are under contract. So if you're a buyer right now watching this video, you really want those numbers to start separating even further as we go in future months. If you're a seller, you want those numbers to start to kind of shrink and get closer. And keep in mind, a lot of this too is going to be seasonality for the area. Right now in October, November, December of the year, it tends to be a little bit slower here in Jacksonville. And so sometimes you will see that in this scenario, those two lines might start to kind of separate a little bit further. It all depends on what hits the market and obviously what the demand does look like. Now, what we're going to look at here is we're actually going to look at the total number of contracts that closed last 6 months. What we see is there was 2,077 contracts that closed, and roughly closed for a median sold price of $489,000. So even though homes are being listed above 500, at least for the last 6 months, homes are selling in that range of what makes it the majority of homes going under contract and the majority of homes that are hitting the market. Now, we also saw here that there was 439 listings that failed to sell for the last 6 months in the area. Now, you may always wonder, is fail to sell a bad thing? And I mean, in some situations, yeah. I mean, a lot of times, sometimes sellers, if they have their house on the market, it's because they want to sell it. But the important thing to take into account is some of these homes that did fail to sell, they may have failed to sell for reasons that you may not always think of. it could be that there was a job relocation that didn't occur. It could be that the seller was just testing the market to see if they get the price they wanted, and they took it off the market once they realized that the price they wanted wasn't what buyers were willing to spend at this time. It could also just mean that the realtor who listed it may have missed something, maybe didn't market it properly. It does happen. People are human. So ultimately, it's not always a reason for panic, so to speak. But one thing to always take into account with this is that as we go throughout the rest of this year, beginning next year, if that number starts to really kind of go up tremendously, then that could definitely be a concern, because then that's telling us that there's more homes leaving the market than maybe are selling. Which is never really what you would want in a long-term projection, whether if you're a buyer or a seller. But in this scenario, we're plenty fine. Next, we're going to look at the median days on market, and we're going to start off with the actives. So for the active homes that are still out there for sale, the median days on market was 51 days for going based off October's data. So that just means that all the homes that are still out there, they're roughly median point 51 days. And there's homes that are going to be more, there's homes that are going to be less. But 51 days does mean that homes are sitting a little bit longer than they may have sat 6 months ago to a year ago. Now, what we're going to look at next is the median days on market as it relates to the ones that sold. Now, we know that for the past 6 months, the median price point was $489,000, but also for the past 6 months, the median days on market was 35 days on the market. 35 days is a little bit higher than maybe some other areas in Jacksonville, but still relatively not too far off. And so overall, to take 35 days is not uncommon. Now, when we started to compare that though to the last 30 days, what we do notice for the past 30 days, that median sold price reduced to, we'll round it to $483,000. And the days on market actually went up to 37 days. So that tells us is that in Mandarin currently, we are actually seeing prices coming down a little bit for what they're selling for. And we're seeing days on market go up a little bit for what it's taking them to sell in relation to the last 6 months. Now, if we continue to see this trend as we go into future months, what's going to tell us that this market is starting to level off some, and that there may actually start to be more sellers in the market in relation to the amount of buyers looking in the area. So very important to know, very important to kind of keep an eye on as we go into the rest of this year and beginning next year. All that being said, median listed sales price is still at 98.8%, the ratio, which just means that a seller is still getting close to what they're asking, roughly around 99%. A seller's getting 99% of what they're asking. So buyers are still able to negotiate a little bit, but ultimately what it's telling us is sellers are starting to list their homes a little bit less because they know that buyers aren't going to go as high. And because of that, buyers are actually coming closer to what the seller is asking for because sellers aren't necessarily pushing the price as much as they may have in previous months. Next up we're going to look at is the absorption rate. So the absorption rate measures, in essence, the amount of homes, the amount of inventory as it relates to new inventory in the market, how long it would take for us to run out of inventory. And what we see here is for the past 6 months of data, it shows that we have 2.6 months of inventory as of this video. And what that tells us is that if no new homes hit the market as of today, we'd be out of homes to sell in 2.6 months. So we'd be out of homes to sell sometime in January. Realistically, the higher the number gets, the better it can be for buyers because it means that you have more options, means that sellers have to be more willing to negotiate. And 2.6 months is the highest that we've seen in quite a while, really since COVID for this area. So that will be something that will be important for us to highlight as we continue to move forward in the rest of this year, beginning next year, as we look at do future market updates. Because realistically, it's still a seller's market, an equilibrium market where it's not a seller's or a buyer's market. It's 6 months of inventory, but at 2.6, it's not as much of a hyper seller's market as it had been previously. These are just a couple other graphs, just going over median sold price, median days on market. Obviously, you said there hasn't been much change on days on market. And then lastly here, we're going to look at this table. So this table measures the absorption rate as it pertains to specific price points. And what we see here is that if you're looking in Mandarin currently, and your price point's anything under 600,000, you are still going to have to deal with that more hyper seller's market, where there's a lot more buyer competition because there's less sellers to support the amount of buyers looking in those price points. Now, it's important to note that these numbers, for the absorption rate, 2.8, 2.7, 1.7, for these price points that are in the red, they are higher than previous months. And so it'll be important to look at as we go into November, December, January. Do those reds turn orange or do they stay red? What we are going to see too is if you're a buyer looking at Mandarin, you're over $600,000 price point, relatively speaking, you're going to have a little bit more ability to negotiate. You have a little bit less competition. There's a little bit more sellers in the market. And so that's important to highlight because realistically, it's good to know what side of the table you're going to be sitting on in that sense. Are you going to be sitting on the side where you have to maybe give a seller more what they're looking for, or are you sitting on the side where you can actually negotiate a little bit more against the seller because there's less competition? All right, now that's going to do it for this video. Now, as I mentioned before, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you get notified when we post more content like this. But also, if you have any questions on anything I went over in this video, or any questions on anything I maybe have not gone over, definitely feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is down below in the details of this video. Definitely feel free to hop on my calendar. We can hop on a one-on-one Zoom call, go over any questions you may have, go over any neighborhoods you may have questions on, and figure out what part of Jacksonville, whether it's Mandarin or a different area, may be the right fit for you and your family. All right, now, until the next video, I'll see you guys again.